Hey, music lovers, this is Byron from Musical Miles Podcast. We are here at the Chalice Roadhouse during the Braun Brothers reunion, and we met a really interesting couple the other night here at the Roadhouse, actually. They saw our post online, and Ford's wife, so this is Ford Goodman, and his wife Lynn sent me a message on Facebook, said, "You need to meet my husband." And just so happens, we were here at the Roadhouse the other night, and she walked up to me and she goes, "Are you the podcast guy?" And I said, "Actually, I am." She noticed Miss Shanda walk through the restaurant, and she said, "That's got to be them." So she came over and talked, and then brought Ford over later that evening and introduced us. But they have an incredible program that they've started called For the Song Charitable Fund, and it's all about the music. That's what this is all about, right?
That's all about the music.
So tell us your story.
Well, my wife and I love great songwriting, and we don't care. Great songwriting and great musicianship, right? And those are two very difficult things to do together. We love the music out of Texas in particular because we think that's the place where songwriters are probably most honored. But we don't care if it's folk or country or rock or blues when it comes out. If it's great songwriting, we're in.
Sure.
And what we've noticed over the years of doing house concerts and being fans and getting to know people is that the music business model really hurts the artists in the middle.
True.
And the middle is an incredibly talented group of people. It's this top 100 bands that get 70% of the money now, and there's 99,000 others touring globally. So how can you help? And I think what we've sort of come to is two of the most economically challenged jobs in the world are touring musicians and venues.
True.
Right? And so we live in northern Nevada near Reno and Lake Tahoe, and we asked ourselves, and we lived in Sonoma before then. We saw the same thing there, though. We asked ourselves, how can we help? And I think patronage is the only answer. We've come up with a really interesting patronage model, a way to raise money and get it in the hands of touring musicians. We in northern Nevada, we get some pretty good musicians coming by, but it's usually the very top in the casinos or maybe some artists over the hill.
Right.
And then somebody who's happy in playing a 100-person hall, but they're not going to make $1,000 a night.
Right.
That leaves out some of the greatest touring musicians in America.
Absolutely.
And they're just not stopping in Reno because they've done it once or twice and they haven't made any money. So we found a unique way to raise money and get it in the hands of touring musicians, and then our community gets a chance to see them.
Perfect. Well, I think, we're a little bit on the same page, and I think that's why this relationship worked well and why we interested each other, right? Because this podcast was really developed to share our love of music with the patrons and with people. And look, we want you to hear these bands that you don't get the opportunity. You don't hear them on the radio. Not here. You hear them in Texas.
Right.
I tell the story, and I told it yesterday when I interviewed Django Walker. He had a song that Pat Green cut and was Texas on My Mind, and that's such a great song. But I saw Pat Green in Idaho Falls, Idaho, and there was only 40 people at the venue because they didn't know who he was. Now he wasn't on the radio, but he was selling out stadiums in Texas, right? He's a big name and a big hitter in Texas, but not here. So we want to be able to share that music like Pat Green, like Mickey and the Motorcars, Reckless Kelly, Jeff Crosby, Darcy Carlson. Go down the list. I mean, Django Walker. There is just such an incredible amount of music out there that people don't know about. And so if we can share it through the podcast and then through your program as well, and we can share your program and help people understand how to help these artists, that's what we want to do.
Yeah, I think the message I'd say is particularly if you live in the western United States, where major metropolitan areas are so far apart.
Right.
If you're in Richmond, Virginia, it's not that far to Washington, D.C.
Correct.
If you're in Salt Lake City, Utah, it's a long damn way to Portland.
It's 3 hours for us. For us, culturally, we live in southeast Idaho, so it's 3 hours for us to drive to Salt Lake to go see. We recently went and saw Stevie Nicks at the Delta Center. But we don't get Stevie Nicks in Idaho Falls. Now, we do have a new venue there recently, the Mountain America Center, that they just opened up in the last couple of years. And they've had some great acts show up there. But typically, we don't get that music.
Right. Well, and Byron, Stevie Nicks doesn't need our help.
No.
Right? She's
no,
doing
she
fine.
Doesn't. She doesn't.
So You've mentioned a couple names of people who've played for the song.
Perfect.
Django Walker has, Jeff Crosby has,
Yeah.
Jamie Lynn Wilson has, Mickey and the Motorcars will. The Wilder Blues coming in a couple weeks. Maybe I could tell you a little bit about the patronage program we've developed.
Please do.
But I think the message to anybody listening to the podcast is find your own way to bring patronage to this in your town.
Right.
What we've sort of discovered is we live in a golf club community that's a part of a broader community. It's about 1,200 homes, and they're not not everybody in the golf club is in the community, and not everybody in the community is in the golf club. So it expands to maybe 1,500 homes.
Okay.
And what we've done is worked with the guy who owns the private club to gain access to those resources at a very low cost or minimal cost. In return, we're bringing the community together, right?
You bet.
We throw a free show, but we tell people, please donate. I mean, you're seeing a nationally touring, critically acclaimed artist that you don't know.
Right.
But it's worth $20.
You bet.
And if you give $100, because we're a charity, right? We're a 501c3. You give $100, it's tax deductible.
Perfect.
And so we're raising, we're getting 200 to 400 people per show, depending upon whether it's indoors or outdoors. And all of a sudden, we have a pot of $4,000 to $8,000. We give 100% of that to the artist.
Awesome.
Even if we get a credit card and we have to pay a $1.50 stripe fee or something, the fund pays for that. The fund pays for the sound. It pays for hospitality for the artist. So we can look at the community and say, every penny you give is going to this artist.
That's awesome.
And now we have $4,000 to $8,000 in a pot. We've spent maybe $2 to cover that show, and there are other communities that do that. Mm-hmm. But I think we've discovered something or done something that we haven't heard of anybody else doing. I urge somebody else to do it. If you want help doing it, you call me. But
well, you've thrown down the gauntlet. You've given them a format to work with, and you're willing to help those communities.
Yeah.
Figure out how to do what you've done.
We're giving money. We're not trying to take money. So, and that's another thing the artists love. But the unique thing we're doing is then we're turning around with a little bit more money and promoting a public show in the Northern Nevada community. So now, we got them there because of this private show.
Sure.
But if they get another $1,000 or $2,000 at the public show, they're building their audience, and the whole community gets to participate and see Django Walker.
And they're going to come to the BBR. They're going to go to Mile Zero Fest.
That's exactly
you're feeding the economy with what you're doing. In the long, the short of it is you're feeding the economy in the music industry.
Yeah, and you can do this as an individual contributor, or I mean, we've put a fair amount of money in, but we've also turned to the community and said, hey, won't you give $5,000 a year to help this happen?
Yes.
And people, once they've come to see 5 or 6 shows, they're like, sure, we will. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
And so we've got a combination of the local community and some family offices who are interested in helping solving the business model problem for music too.
Right.
So, my message is, in your western town, if you're not seeing Mickey and the Motorcars or Django Walker or Jamie Lynn Wilson,
right,
or name somebody in the middle who's terrific.
Yes.
The Nadas from Des Moines, Iowa, incredible folk rock band that's toured with John Cougar Mellencamp.
Wow.
Figure out a way to pull some money together and help them come visit, because they'll love it and your community will love it.
Well, we talked earlier, before we started the podcast, we talked about during COVID, the only thing that kept these musicians alive was actually social media, being able to do those private shows that they could charge $10. Log in and watch our show and send us $10. It helps keep food on the table, right? And Willie Braun did a phenomenal job during that. We actually hired Gary and Mickey Braun, and they came and did a private show for us and 60 of our friends. Really kept it on the down low because of what was going on with COVID, but it was such a great experience. And Gary's told me a couple times that was one of his favorite shows he's ever done, and he promised me he's going to do it again one of these days. I'm sure I probably can't afford them this time, but that's what we did. When we want to support these venues like the Roadhouse. What a cool place right here in Challis, Idaho. Really busy this week. Probably not so much the rest of the year, right? And we have another great venue right up the road from us. It's called Steel and Joe's Bone. It's a little. They have a little outdoor venue. They have a cool stage, and Jeff Crosby's been there. Muzzy's playing in a couple weeks there. Tyler and the Train Robbers. I mean, the Wilder Blue. They just got done opening for Luke Combs, and they came and played a 200-person venue in Bone, Idaho, out in the middle of nowhere. It's actually 20 minutes from Idaho Falls. But we need to do what we can to keep those venues alive, and they struggle as well.
Thank you so much for what you're doing, because that's exactly, we need to try a bunch of things and see what works, right, that helps out. You said something really interesting there that I've been talking about since the pandemic. I think Willie Braun did the greatest job of developing an online presence from any musician I saw, because you can't, I mean, if you think about it, you can't just do concerts online. If you do one, it's there forever.
Right.
And it's not like playing in San Francisco, Salt Lake, Bone, Idaho, and Portland.
Right.
You can't do the same show or almost the same show 4 times online.
Right.
It has to be episodic.
Yes.
And he did episodes.
Yes, he did.
I
know
did
his
he thought it
pandemic
through.
Kitchen. Is that what it was called? It was hilarious. I mean, he always had new recipes, and but it was entertaining, because what did we do for entertainment? I'm telling you, the minute they cracked the gate on the pandemic and we were able to get out, we drove to Immigrant, Montana to see a live show, live music of a girl we don't even, to this day, I can't tell you who she was, but we were so starved for entertainment, for live music, we would go anywhere and see anybody.
It's sort of a difference here too between fans and folks who don't know as much about the joy of seeing live music, right? I mean, one of my favorite experiences as a live music fan was coming to the Braun Brothers reunion right after the pandemic, when they actually held it in person.
Right.
And when Reckless Kelly came on the stage and they were facing 3,500 people who hadn't, I'm tearing up now just thinking about it. 3,500 people who loved them and hadn't seen them for 2.5 years. There wasn't a dry eye in that venue. And it means a lot. But we also have to find a way to draw in people who don't have this experience.
Right.
That's one of the things that's pretty cool about this private club thing. People are willing to come out of their backyards and go a few hundred yards and plop down $20 or even $100.
Why wouldn't?
And then they discover it. And like you said, then they come to the Braun Brothers.
Yeah. Then they're fans. Then they buy their music. They download their albums on Spotify, and you know, there's just so much new music and so many opportunities of, like Jamie Lynn Wilson, what a great artist. I mean, incredibly artist. Jade Marie Patek, I don't know if you know Jade Marie. Love that girl. You know, she's just so talented. And we found them here at these festivals. We found William Clark Green here. We found American Aquarium here. And we're lifelong fans.
Yeah, and you hadn't seen them before. It's the experience of live music from a great, and you know, I define great as if you're nationally touring, if you do this full time for a living, then you're finding a way to be better than almost anybody else.
Sure.
Right? Those people aren't just great writers and singers, they're great entertainers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You mentioned Django Walker.
Yeah.
He's one of the greatest entertainers I've ever seen.
Right.
I've seen him do 3 shows in 3 nights to 3 very different audiences, and he got every one of them.
Perfect.
But he did it completely differently because he knows. He could read the audience. He could see, okay, I need to do more covers here.
Right.
Because these people don't know me and aren't paying attention.
Right.
And these 65 people came from me.
Right.
And these 300 people, they may not have come from me, but they're sitting and listening.
Right.
And he reads that and changes it so that everybody's up on their feet.
Yeah. He knows how to capture the audience, right? So looking forward to him today. He's here today with Roger Klein and with Juliana Rankin. So really looking forward to that, a little acoustic set. But no, this is just such a cool deal. And thank you for coming on. There are some numbers. You shared some numbers with me the other night. I don't think we've shared the actual numbers.
Yeah, the economics of the music business is frightening. You know, before there was IP, intellectual property.
Sure.
Musicians were mostly paid by patrons. And somewhere around the early 1900s, sheet music became something. There was no recorded media yet.
Right.
But the publishers took all the money. They didn't give much to the songwriter who wrote the music that was on the sheet.
Right.
And then Thomas Edison invented the thing, and we got vinyl records.
Sure.
And all of a sudden there was a music business. There's still a long history of publishers taking most of the money.
Right.
But it's changed again with file sharing and with streaming.
Right.
All the money's going somewhere else. So two sets of things, the recorded music industry and touring. Touring has gotten worse. In 1982, 50% of the touring revenue went to the largest 100 artists. In 2013, it was 50%. In 2023, it was 2019, it was 60%. And in 2023, it's 70%, largely driven by Taylor Swift's Era Tour. But still, 70%? That leaves 99,900 touring acts globally with the rest of the money.
That's sharing that little tiny piece of the pie.
Another way to think of it is, in streaming, artists have to give away 165 man-years of listening to their IP to get $100,000 for their entire ecosystem. That includes managers, songwriters, bands, everything.
That is frightening.
It's frightening. That's 20 times worse than selling a record. And today, right now, when 70% of the global touring revenues go to 100 acts, and everybody else has to survive on touring, only 12% of the total revenues in music goes to the artists. What just shows you there's these incredible acts in the middle where everything's stacked up against them. I'd go so far as to say all the people we mentioned, Jamie Lynn Wilson, Django Walker, they do this because they love it. They do this because they have to. They don't do this because
to get rich
it's
and
financially
famous.
rewarding.
No.
They do it for us.
Well, and I think that bears, acknowledging the fact that when you go to these live events, one, buy the tickets, go to the live events, right?
Yes.
Support them. Then once you're here, buy the merch, buy the T-shirts, buy the vinyls, buy what they're selling, because guess what? I watched Tyler and the Train Robbers, and I've known Tyler for a couple of years now, and I've seen him everywhere from Fort Worth, Texas to Pendleton, Oregon, and Bone, Idaho, right? What a great guy. But he was there last night selling T-shirts and stickers and anything they can, signing autographs, because he knows how important that is to fill that van full of gas so they can get to the next one.
Exactly.
And we're going to get to interview Tyler coming up. Listen, Jack's getting ready to get started. We got to do an interview with Jack Nelson coming up next. Thank you so much. How do they get a hold of you? How do they follow? How do we find out more about For the Song Charitable Fund?
Our website is www.forthesong.org. And my email is ford@forthesong.org. Send me a message, and I'd love to help you set something up like this
Awesome.
in your community.
Well,
and thank you for what you do for music.
You did invite me to come over to see the Wilder Blue, and so I'm going to try and put that on my schedule and try and come and see you. And
Can't wait to see you in Northern Nevada.
And would love to. So thank you for taking time to visit with us. This is Byron from Musical Miles podcast. Don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms, all of them. YouTube. Make sure you go to our YouTube channel, subscribe so you get notified when these podcasts come out. Thank you. We'll see you down the road somewhere. Adios.